right, in this video, this tutorial, what we're going to do is we're going to learn about SwiftUI and learn how to use it to create animations to get things to move around, and also how to use SwiftUI to play back some music. So for this video, you're going to need a background image, and you're going to need a couple of smaller images to represent buttons, and we're going to use those same images to rotate and whatnot. So we're going to have animations happen to those images. You're also going to need a couple of MP3 files for songs, or just a couple of song files you can include in this application. All right, so here's the end product of what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to hit play, and when I hit the play button, we come to 3 buttons that will be animations. So if I click on the blue square, we're going to see it turn into a circle and then resume back to a square. If I click on the play button, we're going to see it rotate back. All right. If I click on this third icon, it's going to shrink and fade at the same time. Hit it again, it's going to return back to normal. All right, so that's the first page. Hit back, go to the second page, and if I hit play, all right, and if I hit the other one, a different song. So that's our end product for today. So what we're going to do first is create a new project. All right, it'll be iOS single view application. And we're going to call this M3P1 sound animations. And give it a home. Make sure that user interface is SwiftUI. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is bring in our images and our sounds so we have them ready to go when we need them. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple of folders. I'm going to right click on my project name, and I'm going to say new group and call it music. Now I don't need to create a group for my images because I'm going to take advantage of the assets.xc assets file. So what I'm going to do is, at this point, assuming you have your MP3 files somewhere in your hard drive, maybe in your downloads folder, go ahead and bring them in to your music folder right now. If you're going to drag them in, then do a copy items if needed. Make sure that is checked off. All right. And then for your assets.xc assets folder, we're going to drag our images into here. And so just grab images off the internet for this tutorial, for this learning session here, to follow along in this application here. All right. So at this point, we've got our images, we've got our music, we're ready to start coding. Now, by default, SwiftUI generated the Contentview.Swift file, so we can consider this our home page, and it comes by default with text hello world, which is fine, but we're going to replace that. What we're going to do is we're going to add 2 more files, 2 more views. Let's get them out of the way. So I'm also going to right click on the folder M3P1 sound animations, and I'm going to say new file. It'll be iOS Swift UI view, and I'm going to call this anims view for animation. Right? Maybe I'll move it closer to content view. Ideally, you want to put it into its own group. I'm going to right click on M3P1 again and say new file. And again, iOS Swift UI view. I'm going to call this Soundsview. All right, so I've got all the files that I need for this little tutorial. Now it's up to us to code this up and get everything up and running. What I want to do first is I want to get the home page up and running. All right. So what we noticed in this demo was that you have a background image with 2 button images on top. We did this already in a previous tutorial, but let's just get it up and running so that we're ready to use it. So starting off in Contentview, because that's our home page. All right, what we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the hello world line. And I'm gonna replace it with a navigation view. Open and close some curlies. Now, because I want my background image to be in the background, I need a Z stack. So Z stack or Z stack, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And we're going to use an image. And it was called Gundam Seed BG in my case. Whatever the name of your background image file is, go ahead and reuse it. Now, in order for it to be stretched to the background and resized and so on, and to pass the safe areas, we'll have to say dot resizable, dot scale to fill, dot edges ignoring safe area, dot all. Like I missed my dot there. There. All right. So that's our background image. Now we want to add in a couple of buttons. We'll put them in an H stack to be horizontally aligned. So we'll say H stack. And even though we know they're buttons, because we want them to navigate to a new page, they have to be navigation links. So we're going to say navigation link. All right, destination will be a little too much. I got the wrong overload there. I'm gonna hide this for more space. All right, so destination will be anim's view, instantiated. Okay, we got our closing round bracket. Open some curlies, and inside of it, we'll use the play button image to be our image for this button. So image play dot rendering mode dot original. All right, that's our first nav link. Second one will be navigation link again, destination. This will be Soundsview, instantiated. Open and close your curlies. Image, we'll use, my other file was called settings. So again, for play and settings, whatever files you downloaded, just a tip, when you download images off the internet, you may sometimes or quite often get long file names with long digits. You want to rename them to something simple. And you can actually rename them inside assets. .xc assets. So you actually have the option to rename them there to save yourself some time. So just an option, but something to consider. All right, so image settings dot, again, rendering mode will be dot original. All right, those are my 2 navigation links. Okay, we're almost done with the home page here. Now, what we want to do is finish off our navigation view. We added our H stack with our 2 nav links. All right, we need to polish this off with, let me just clear up all my blank spaces here. I need to tell it the title of this navigation bar. A lot of space there. There we go. So now, what I need to do is I need to close off the navigation view with a bar title. So closing off the Z stack, I'll say dot navigation bar title will be home. All right. And closing off the navigation view tag or bracket, sorry, is dot navigation view style autocomplete's not working. Navigation view style. There it is. And the style will be stack navigation view style. All right. Now, the line a moment ago that says home inside of it, that basically says the text title for our home, for our bar at the top of the home page. But this last line is important. Without this last line, and I mentioned this in my previous video on page navigation, but without this line, navigation doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. It gets really corrupted. It gets really messy. It just bunches. It screws up. So you need to basically tell it the style, which is saying stack, which it basically is saying that we're stacking views one on top of the other. So just push and pop essentially is what's going on there. All right, so that's our home page. You can just do a Command S to save, just to be sure. But before we run it, I want to make sure that this is a landscape only app. I don't want this appearing in portrait mode. So let's look at our project settings here at the top. All right, when we click on our project settings, there's a ton of settings here. All right, and what I want to do is look at device orientation. I want to uncheck portrait and just have landscape left, landscape right. If you're really picky, just pick one of the landscapes, but I'll leave both of them. They should be fine. Now we have enough to run. So making sure you uncheck portrait there. So I'm going to switch back to content view just before I do. And let's give it a run. All right, there's our home page. All right, buttons navigate to the new page, hello world. We haven't configured it, so we're assuming it's going to the correct scene. And again, hello world, going to the other new page. So we're assuming again it's going to the new scene. All right, so that was pretty easy. Our home page is done. Now let's move on to the animations portion. So we're going to switch over to animsview.swift, and we have here a simple generated hello world. All right, so in our anims view, let's remove our hello world line again. Let's start by getting our background image up and running. So we don't need to talk about navigation stuff. That's already done in content view. We just can jump right into our code and create a Z stack. And we'll start with our background image again. So image Gundam Seed BG. Mine, and then dot resizable, dot scale to fill, dot edges ignore safe area for dot all, and finally let's fade it out to with a dot opacity of 0.25 just to fade it out. Okay. Got our background image in there. All right, now let's create an H stack and add buttons this time. We're not using navigation links, we're using buttons. And these buttons will operate animations for us. So we'll say H stack. All right, there's my closing H stack. I'll start my first button. So button and action. Colon, open my curlies, close my curlies is my closing round bracket. I'll come back to the action in a moment. Let's actually populate it. And the first button, like you saw in the demo, will be a square. So we're just going to say color dot blue. All right. Dot corner radius. And I'm going to leave this for a moment. So corner radius will be 0. Okay, just for now. And there's more to it. We'll fill it out in a sec. I just want to finish off the button first by saying dot frame will be width will be 200. Height will be 200. Alignment, we'll say dot top. Okay. Now, I'm not finished with this. Let's see if we can actually see the button first before we continue. So there's our button, right? Simple square. Okay. What I want to do is make this into a circle. when we click on it. All right. So we're going to require a couple of variables, one to do the animation and one to, I want to actually save the width and height as a variable. So we're not typing in 200 all the time, because I'm going to reuse those dimensions later. So first I'll say let dim, which is a CG float, equal 200. All right. Now I'm going to use a state variable to indicate the status. So if I click on the button, I want it to turn into a circle, and then when I click on it again, I want to turn it back into a square. So I'm going to use a Boolean with true and false. And so false will represent one shape and true will represent the other. So I'm going to say state var is circle, which is equal to false. Start off at false. Now I'm going to use this state var in my button. First off, with the action, what I'm going to do is I'm going to toggle it. So I'll say self dot is circle dot toggle. So whatever it is, it'll just flip to the opposite of that. Now I can complete my my design of this button. So I have color blue, corner radius. I'm going to remove the 0 and say is circle question mark 100 colon 0. So 100 represents, so if is circle is true, then the corner radius goes from 0, so 0 roundedness, to 100% roundedness. All right. Otherwise, if is circle becomes false, then the roundedness goes back to 0, which you basically have a square at that point. We'll add in dot animation dot default. Okay. What this means, what this last line means is that what style of animation, what additional animation are we adding to this? Dot default is actually the same as what's called dot ease in, ease out. So dot ease, well, first off, there's ease in, there's ease out, there's ease in out, and there's default. Sorry, not default. There's well, default represents ease in, ease out, and there's linear. Linear is basically like just do the animation, right? Just do it. Okay. Ease in means slowly pick up speed when you get to top speed, then finish off your animation, right? Ease out is the opposite, where it's like do the animation, wait to the end, slow down as you approach your destination. And ease in out is both. So ease in, do your animation, slow down as you get to the destination. That's what ease in, ease out means. And dot default is ease in, ease out. I believe Apple found it. In my past workings with animations, when I was using CA basic animation, I would always use ease in, ease out because it just looked good 90% of the time. There are other times where it looks silly, but 90% of the time it looks good. So we're using dot default to represent that. All right, so let's give it a shot. See what we have here. All right, so we hit play. There's my square. My square is now a circle. And if I hit circle again, there's a square. All right. So now we have a simple animation that we can use to toggle our button. All right. So now the next animation we want to do is a rotation animation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow suit with adding a state variable for rotation. So I'm going to say at state var is rotation equals false. All right. And I'm going to add a button again this time. Before I do, I promised that frame would be 200 by 200. So it would be represented as a variable called dim. So let's fix that too. Now we should give some spacing between our buttons before we create the new one. So I'm going to add an under dot frame. I'm going to say dot padding, and we'll represent it. Let's say 50 pixels. All right, good padding there. All right, now we'll get a new button going. So button action is open some curlies. Well, we already defined the variable, so let's say self.isRotation.toggle as well. So now let's define our image to represent our button by saying image, and we reuse the play button. All right. And we'll say dot rendering mode dot original dot aspect ratio will be content mode dot fit. And I just want to double check. Okay, good. All my errors went away because it was there for a little bit too long. I guess my Mac was just a little bit of asleep, but looks like everything's good. So scroll up a bit. So content mode dot fit. Now let's get into our rotation. So we want to rotate it. We'll just say dot rotation effect, and we'll bring in our variable again. So is rotation. We'll say question mark dot. Now it wants either degrees or radians. We'll stick to degrees since it's simple. So degrees, and I'll say 360 colon dot degrees 0. All right. So what this is saying is that when is rotation is true, rotate it 360 degrees. Otherwise, rotate it back 0 degrees. So rotate it back to 0 degrees. Okay, so it'll actually do a rotation and undo that rotation. It goes in both directions in that case. Now let's add one more effect. So we're going to add a dot animation dot spring. All right, now this is a fun one. What happens with dot spring is it's like the name implies, it's spring. So it's going to rotate. When it gets to the end, as a spring might, it's actually going to overshoot a bit and then snap back like boing, right? It's going to do that, all right? Rotates backwards, going to rotate, gets to the end, boing, right? So just sort of like, it gives that sort of springy effect at the end, all right? So that's what spring is all about. So spring is a fun one to add in there. All right, let's define our dimensions. So we'll say dot frame, and we'll go with the same width. Will be dim, height will be dim, and alignment will be dot top. And let's also put in some padding there. So dot padding of 50. All right, so we got some padding in there too. All right, now let's give this a go. So I hit the play button. All right, now I got both buttons there, so we know what happened with that. Hit play. Right, you saw a tiny little springy effect at the end. You have to really pay attention for it. All right. All right. So there you go. That's our rotation effect. All right. The next effect we're going to do is a shrink and fade. All right. So what we're going to do is add another state var. I'm going to call it, well, as you might guess, state var is shrink fade equals false. All right, now let's use that with another button. So we'll say button action, and too much info there. Action will be open some curlies. There's that. Close the round bracket. Okay, so we're going to say self.isShrinkFade.toggle again. All right, open and close some curlies there. Now let's define our image button. So image, say settings, my settings button. All right, dot rendering mode again is dot original. Dot aspect ratio with content mode dot fit, and opacity. Now we're going to actually add two animations at the same time here. So we'll say dot opacity will be is shrink fade question mark. So for opacity, we'll fade it to 50%, so 0.5. Otherwise, it'll be 1.0 or 100% visible. All right, that's our opacity. Now let's do a scale effect at the same time by saying dot scale effect. And inside of that, we'll again use our is shrink fade question mark. So for our scale effect, we'll scale it down to 80%. So we'll say 0.8 colon 1.0. All right. And then finally dot animation dot spring. All right, let's add a little springy effect to it. Let's see if we can catch it this time around too. Let's finish off our button by saying dot frame. And we'll say width is dim, height is dim as well, and alignment is dot top. All right, and finally final padding, so padding of 50. All right, that's it. So we have our third button in this animation here that we will use. Just gonna hit run. All right, hit play again. All right, so our third button there, shrunk and fade, restored to original dimensions. All right, so those are our animations. Now, let's move on to playing some music, and we'll do that in our other page there. All right, before we move on to playing some music, we did neglect to put a bar title for the animations page. Let's just add that in just for completeness. We'll just say dot navigation bar title will be animations. And just to double check, let's hit play. All right, just get our title there, animations, complete the thing. Now we can move on to our settings, or sorry, our music page. So we're going to move over to Soundsview.Swift, and let's just start off by completing the structure of the page and getting a background image up and a couple of buttons. All right, so that's what we'll start with. So I'm going to start by removing Hello World. Replace it with a Z stack. And since we're here, let's just complete this by saying dot navigation bar title will be sounds. All right, gets out of the way. And let's start by putting our image in. So image, Gundam Seed BG. And we'll say dot resizable, dot scale to fill, dot edges ignoring safe area, dot all, so it stretches all the way to the end, and dot opacity at 0.25. All right, so that's our background image. Now let's put a couple of buttons up, all right, using an H stack again. So H stack. And we'll say button action colon, and we'll put in some curlies, but I won't fill in the blanks just yet. We'll just leave it like that. Instead, we'll put in our what we're going to populate the button with by saying image play. So we'll use the play button, play image, and we'll say rendering mode dot original, and we'll say aspect ratio is dot fit. All right, that's our first button. We should specify some dimensions. So let's define, actually right there, it's a good place to define our dim variable again by saying let dim, which is a CG float, equal 200. All right, then we can say dot frame will be width colon dim, height colon dim, and alignment is a dot top. All right, and give it some padding. So dot padding of 50. All right, and that's our first button. Now let's add our second button. All right, basically the same code as above. So again, button, action, image, settings with dot rendering mode, dot original, and dot aspect ratio, dot fit. And again, dot frame will be dim, dim, top. All right, and dot padding of 50. All right, those are our two buttons. Now let's just run it and verify everything is good before we go deeper and play our song. So hit the settings button. There's our settings, sounds there. We got two buttons right there. Hit home. All right. So we got our structure for the page up and running. Now it's up to us to get some music playing. All right. So what we're gonna need is a framework called AVFoundation. All right. So I'm gonna import AVFoundation. All right. This is the framework that has all of our all of our audio playback and recording functionality, and video playback and recording functionality too. So now that we have that, let's start by defining a method. All right, I define this method down here, just towards the end of our struct. All right, by saying func play music. We'll say song is string. All right, so we're gonna have a method, generic method, to play some music for us. Now, what we want to do is we want to get access to the song we want to play. Now, in our case, all of our music is here under the music folder. And when we compile this thing and we build this thing, we'll end up with a binary in our app called m3p1 soundanimations.app. All right, this app file is the app file that will contain everything: code, images, music, everything. All right, and our songs, song 1, song 2, and song 3, I'm not going to use 3, just 1 and 2 today, is inside this file. Now, to get access to this file and to get access to the song inside this file, we have to get access to the app bundle. This is called an app bundle, by the way. The term is actually app bundle. So we have to access the bundle to get access to this song. So I'm going to say if let path equals bundle.main.path, all right, for resource, so whatever song we pass in, song, of type, I'll hard code that to MP3, so .mp3, all right, and what's happening here, well, let me close my curlies, is that our app bundle, this app file represented by bundle, all right, has our song, all right, so we're asking it to tell us the file path, the location for our song .mp3, all right, save it as a variable path. Now we're using an if let, and just to recall if lets. If let basically says that if this portion is nil, this if will fail and we'll continue on. We'll ignore the if and keep going. All right. If this portion is not nil, whatever the result is, save it as path. And now we have a variable called path we can use inside our if block. All right. So that's what if lets are all about. All right. So we're inside the if. We have our song, assuming we set everything up correctly. Let's first initialize an AV audio player. Now to do that, we're gonna need a couple of class variables. So I'm going to move back to the top because we're going to need it inside the other methods. I'm actually going to define 2 more class variables. And they'll be state variables actually. So I'll say state var audio player, which is of type AV audio player, with a question mark to say, hey, it can be nil. It's okay to be nil. Don't cause it to crash just yet because we're hoping it won't be nil eventually. State var is playing will be a bool set it equal to false. All right. Now I can go back to our method and continue on. So what we'll do is we'll instantiate our AV audio player by saying self.audioPlayer equals AV audio player instantiated. All right. Self.isPlaying dot toggles. We'll toggle whether we're playing or not. And then now what we want to do is we have our song. We have our path to our song, that is, the location inside our app bundle. We need to use a URL object to get access to this, to get real access. So we know where it's located. So path just tells us where it's located. URL gets us access to it, gets us a pointer to it. So we're going to say let URL equals URL. And you probably recall URL from using URL to define a website, right? Like www.projectmkd.com, for example. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to use it as a file. So we'll say file URL with path. We'll pass in path. All right. So we have our URL there. Okay. Now let's do the following needs to be inside what's called a do catch. Now you know about try catches from C# and Java and so on. It's the same idea, except we have a do catch now. So instead of try, it's do, but it's the same idea. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to say do, and we'll say self.audioPlayer equals try AV audio player contents of URL, which is just URL. Now it'll throw an error, it'll throw an exception, it'll throw an issue if this doesn't work. All right. That's what the try keyword's all about. All right, now continue on. Don't worry about the error. The error is because we didn't write the catch statement yet. We're going to finish that off after. So let's keep going. We'll say self.audioPlayer.prepare to play, which basically, as you can see there, it preloads the song. So it buffers it in the background. So prepare to play. All right, and then self.audioPlayer.play. All right, play the song. Now let's get rid of that error by putting our catch statement in. And catch, we'll just do a print to the console and just say error. All right, that's our generic method. See, errors are all gone. That's our generic method for playing our song. Okay, now how will we use this? Okay, well now we're going to return back to our buttons. And so we've got our 2 buttons here. Start with the first button. I'm just going to say self.playMusic. And I'm going to hard code it to song 1. All right, just like the song 1 I have up here. But notice I'm not passing in the MP3 extension. And we'll even say self.isPlaying equals true. And here we go. Self.playMusic for song 2. And self.isPlaying equals true. All right, and that's it. Let's give it a run. Let's see if we can hear our music. All right, I'm going to hold my microphone close to my speakers. All right. All right, and that's the other song. All right, and there you have it. So that was our introduction. Let me hit home to get rid of the songs. But that was our introduction into doing animations and also how to play songs or how to play audio back to your user. So that summarizes our tutorial for today. Hope you got a lot out of it. Don't forget to subscribe and also share it with your friends if you found the tutorial very helpful. All right, thanks, take care, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.